What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is your boy Willie Does Wrestling, back at it again with a brand new video. And this is a bit of a follow-up video to a video that I made last week, where last week I ranked, or really just gave my opinion on the best match of every WrestleMania from WrestleMania 39 to WrestleMania 30 in reverse chronological order. In this video, since we are still in WrestleMania season, we're doing more of the WrestleMania themed videos. We are going to give our opinions, or at least my opinion anyway, of the worst match in every WrestleMania from 39 all the way to 30. And this could probably be a little bit of a longer video. And of course, before we get started, I really need to preface, because wrestling fans, I swear, this is my opinion and my opinion alone. They will definitely not be the same as yours. So leave your thoughts down in the comments below for what you consider to be the worst match of all the WrestleManias that I am going to be talking about as well. If you are new, be sure to like, be sure to subscribe, be sure to turn post notifications on so you never miss an upload. And let's get right to it. Obviously, we're going to start with WrestleMania 39. We're going to go to night 2. And, of course, we're going to give our thoughts of every night for the 2-night WrestleManias. So, obviously, night 2, we've had Brock Lesnar and Omos. We had the WrestleMania Women's Showcase. We had Gunther versus Sheamus versus Drew McIntyre, which I ranked the best match. Bianca Belair versus Asuka. Snoop Dogg versus The Miz. Edge versus the Demon Finn Balor in a Hell in a Cell match, and Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes for the Undisputed Universal Championship. If you are a longtime viewer of my channel, you know my disdain for a particular impromptu match that took place on the show, that being Snoop Dogg versus The Miz. That is my pick for the worst match of WrestleMania 39 Night 2. Because I was all fine, right, with night 1 where The Miz faced Pat McAfee in an impromptu match. But who in the right mind thought that it was a good idea to have Shane McMahon, yeah, the original opponent was Shane McMahon, to face The Miz at WrestleMania in the year 2023? That really infuriated me, because that was when I tweeted out at that point, I was like, this has Vince McMahon all over it. This proves that Vince McMahon was still running things. And it was like, the ship already sailed for a Miz and Shane McMahon feud, so why was this happening? Then this match was severely cursed. The match began. Shane McMahon tried to do a little bit of a duck and all that stuff when Miz was running the ropes. Tears both of his quads. Then WWE decides to pull an audible by having Snoop Dogg attack The Miz, hit the worst people's elbow I have ever seen in professional wrestling, done by any personality, and gets the 1-2-3 over two-time Grand Slam champion The Miz. Not only does this make The Miz look like an absolute joke, but it also absolutely was a waste of time. There was no reason for this match to happen. Every time I look back at WrestleMania 39, like, I literally have it on Blu-ray, and every time I look at this match on the match card, I'm just like, oh my god, what were they thinking? So, like, and WrestleMania 39 was a good Mania, but it was like the sheer joke that was the Miz versus Snoop Dogg. I just can't forgive it. And I mean, if you want to say, well, it's an impromptu match, well, then I'd give it to Brock and Omos, because it had no reason to exist. But anyway, my pick for worst match of Mania 39 Night 2 is Snoop Dogg versus The Miz. Now we'll go on to Night 1 of WrestleMania 39, and we had Austin Theory versus John Cena. We had Men's Showcase, Rollins versus Logan Paul, Becky, Trish, and Lita versus Damage Control, Rey and Dominic, Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair for the SmackDown Women's Championship, Pat McAfee versus The Miz, and then Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus the Usos for the tag team titles. My pick for worst match is going to be Austin Theory versus John Cena. That's my pick for the worst match. I also said this in my worst match of every WWE pay-per-view in 2023. But the reason why I picked this is because it was so goddamn long. I mean, I meant to say so slow because John Cena, you could tell in this match, he was so past his prime. And, you know, the victory due to low blow is always going to leave a sour taste in my mouth. I always hate it when they do that stupid ref bump. Then, you know, someone does a submission, the heel taps, and then the referee gets up right at the moment where the heel wins. And listen, I'd be fine if, you know, Theory beats John and then goes on to become a main event player or have a very stellar reign with the United States Championship. That did not happen here. Nothing benefited from it. Theory's reign didn't get better. Theory's character didn't get better. Theory is now in a tag team with Grayson Waller, where Waller's the star and Austin Theory's just sitting back. This win over John Cena, like, do you remember in the age where getting a victory over John Cena would benefit someone's career? Case in point, Roman Reigns and AJ Styles. Yeah, that's not it anymore. Because Austin Theory, like, nothing changed. You could have taken this match out of WrestleMania and nothing would change. Because Austin Theory was the same guy, same terrible reign, and just absolute, you know, trash. This was just an excuse to get John Cena on the card because it was in Hollywood, and it was an excuse for Austin Theory to get a win because they were so confident in Austin Theory, and they did nothing with it. So, like, nobody cared either. No one cares about Austin Theory, and that was literally the entire feud between Austin Theory and John Cena, was Cena basically saying, you don't matter. So, yeah, Austin Theory versus John Cena is my pick for worst match of WrestleMania 39. Now we move on to WrestleMania 38 Night 2, where we have RK Bro versus the Street Profits versus Alpha Academy for the Raw Tag Team titles. We had Bobby Lashley versus Omos, Johnny Knoxville versus Sami Zayn. We had the Fatal 4-Way match for the Women's Tag Team titles where Sasha Banks and Naomi beat Carmella, Queen Zelina, Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley, and Natalya and Shayna Baszler. We had Edge versus AJ Styles. We had Sheamus and Ridge Holland versus The New Day. We had Pat McAfee versus Austin Theory. And then we had Mr. McMahon beating Pat McAfee. And then we had Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar. Listen, I don't even need to consider, but Vince versus Pat McAfee. Why? Just why did we have to waste time in this WrestleMania for a Vince McMahon ego fest? It was completely embarrassing. And, like, the fact that this took place and the fact that Pat McAfee got embarrassed at WrestleMania, Vince McMahon did a very light kick with a soccer ball to the gut of Pat McAfee, and that was enough for Pat to get pinned by Mr. McMahon. Like, it didn't need to exist, and I look back on that match, and I'm just like, no. It was absolutely trash. Yeah, no, I don't even have any words to say. I mean, sure, Stone Cold came out afterward, and Vince botched a stunner, but it's like, that's not enough to forgive for this absolute piece of shit waste of time of a match between Mr. McMahon and Pat McAfee. So, that is my pick for worst match of WrestleMania 38 Night 2. Now we move on to WrestleMania 38 Night 1. We had the Usos versus Shinsuke Nakamura and Rick Boogs. We had Drew McIntyre versus Happy Corbin. We had The Miz and Logan Paul versus Rey Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio. We had Bianca Belair versus Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's title. We had Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins. We had Charlotte versus Ronda Rousey for the SmackDown Women's Championship. And then we had Stone Cold versus Kevin Owens in a no-holds-barred match. My pick for the worst match has to go to Drew McIntyre versus Happy Corbin. I feel like most of these matches I'm going to pick are like matches that have no reason to exist. And it wasn't that this match was bad per se. I love McIntyre. I love Corbin. Not a lot of people love Corbin, but I love Corbin. But this didn't need to be at WrestleMania. And it was boring because nothing was at stake. We've seen these two at that point in 2022 face off numerous times, especially with Madcap Moss in the mix. And it was just like, why? Why? And then the one, and it's so forgettable too. You would look at this event and completely forget McIntyre and Corbin faced off on this card. And the one thing that I remember about this match was when McIntyre had his big ass sword and he cut the ropes in a, ooh, so scary moment. It was just like, no, man. No. It's not scary. It's not cool. And it didn't need to exist. So, yeah, McIntyre versus Corbin's my pick for worst match. A night 1 of WrestleMania 38. Now we move on to WrestleMania 37, night 2. We had Randy Orton versus The Fiend. We had Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler versus Natalya and Tamina for the women's tag team titles. We had Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn. We had Sheamus versus Riddle for the U.S. title. We had Apollo Crews versus Big E for the IC title. We had Rhea Ripley versus Asuka for the Raw women's title. And then we had Roman Reigns versus Edge versus Daniel Bryan for the Universal title. My pick goes to, and I really hate to do this, it goes to Randy Orton versus The Fiend, Bray Wyatt, R.I.P. at WrestleMania 37 Night 2. The booking for this match was god-awful. God-awful. Did we not learn from WrestleMania 33? We had to revisit this feud with Randy Orton and The Fiend. Listen, I get it. The whole story was The Fiend got burned alive by Orton at TLC. He came back at Fastlane during the not-so intergender match between Alexa Bliss and Randy Orton. And then this happened. And the just terrible ending and the booking of this match, it's just why? You had Alexa Bliss come out in a big-ass Jack-in-the-Box, distracting Bray. She had, this black blood-ish liquid coming out of her head. And then Orton hits one RKO on The Fiend and beats him. And everyone's just like, what the fuck? This was the moment that single-handedly buried The Fiend. Single-handedly. And you think after this match, right? It was okay, so what's going to happen with Alexa and Bray now? Is there going to be a payoff? Is there going to be a feud? Is Alexa Bliss going to feud with, team with someone else and they're going to face Bray? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Bray is off of TV. He ends up getting fired. And Alexa Bliss goes on to have this terrible character with a terrible looking doll, and nothing happens afterward. Nothing. And it was just a terrible final match for the first run of Bray Wyatt. Didn't need to exist. And the booking with Alexa Bliss just absolutely, I was disgusted with that. So that's my pick for worst match of night 2 at WrestleMania 37. Now we go on to night 1, where we had Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre for the WWE title. We had Natalya winning a tag team turmoil match to earn a women's tag team title match at night 2. We had Cesaro versus Seth Rollins. We had AJ Styles and Omos versus the New Day for the Raw tag titles. We had Braun Strowman versus Shane McMahon in a steel cage match. We had Bad Bunny and Damian Priest versus The Miz and John Morrison. And then we had Bianca Belair versus Sasha Banks for the SmackDown Women's title. My pick will go to Braun Strowman versus Shane McMahon inside a steel cage. I don't remember a whole lot about this match, but what I do remember is the absolute terrible booking and the terrible build to this feud was Shane just all of a sudden had a problem with Braun and called him dumb, and that's it. And then they recreated the whole best in the world thing by having Elias and Jackson Riker be Shane McMahon's cronies. And like, this was just an excuse to get Shane on the card, like, and just to have another match at WrestleMania, because it was like basically a tradition at this point that Shane needs to have a match. No, he doesn't. He had no reason to. The whole big person getting bullied is just dumb, and I hate when people do that. And if I were to pick any match, it has to be Strowman Shane. Like, there's not a lot to say about the actual match itself. It's that forgettable. But if I were to give it to any match, it's got to be Braun Shane. Now we move on to WrestleMania 36, the first two-night WrestleMania. And it's I'm not going to count the pre-show match. We had Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley for the NXT Women's Championship. We had Aleister Black versus Bobby Lashley. We had Otis versus Dolph Ziggler. We had Edge versus Randy Orton, a last man standing match. Street Profits versus Angel Garza and Austin Theory. We had Bayley versus Sasha Banks, Lacey Evans, Naomi, and Tamina in a fatal 5-way match for the SmackDown Women's Championship. We had The Fiend Bray Wyatt versus John Cena in a Firefly Funhouse match. And then we had Drew McIntyre versus Brock Lesnar for the WWE title. Now, I know by obvious I could give it to Aleister Black versus Bobby Lashley because it just didn't need to exist. But in reality, I got to give it to Edge versus Randy Orton in the last man standing match. And listen, man, I know this was Edge's first singles match in his second run after coming back from his retirement. But this match was so goddamn long. And like, they went all over the Performance Center, you know, bashing everything and fighting it out and all that. But it was just like, with no fans in the arena and just how slow everything was, it really took away from the hype of Edge versus Randy Orton. And I don't know about you, but I'm not a big fan of last man standing matches. Like, I know that might be what? But I'm not a big fan of last man standing matches. I think they're too long, and I think it's an absolute terrible stipulation. But yeah, Edge got the win, which I felt was the right way to go. But just the execution of this match, it had a very good premise, but the execution of this match was absolutely god-awful, in my opinion, so I have to give it to Edge versus Randy Orton in the last man standing match. Night one, we had Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross versus the Kabuki Warriors. We had Elias versus King Corbin. We had Becky Lynch versus Shayna Baszler for the Raw Women's Championship. We had Sami Zayn versus Daniel Bryan for the Intercontinental Championship. We had John Morrison versus Jimmy Uso and Kofi Kingston in a triple threat ladder match for the SmackDown Tag Team Championship. We had Kevin Owens versus Seth Rollins. And we had Braun Strowman versus Goldberg for the Universal title. And then we had The Undertaker versus AJ Styles in a Boneyard match. My pick has got to go to Braun Strowman versus Goldberg for the Universal title. Now listen, I get it. They had to pull an audible because Roman Reigns pulled out of WrestleMania because it was an increased risk of him getting COVID. But like, this match was only 2 minutes. It was a pure finisher fest. Like, I think they even said on commentary that Braun Strowman hit like 4 power slams in order to beat Goldberg. So it was just like, well, pal, if we can't get Goldberg versus Roman in a spear versus spear match, we'll get the other big sweaty man, Braun Strowman, just so Goldberg can drop the belt. It was absolutely terrible. And even the fact that there was no fans as well absolutely killed the mood. And listen, nothing against Braun Strowman, right? I like Braun Strowman. But his matches at Mania are just cursed, bro. And it was clear that Strowman was not going to win the Universal Championship on any other day besides WrestleMania. And it was just like, okay, we need a good replacement for Roman. We'll give Braun the Universal belt. And this also came just like weeks after Braun Strowman dropped the Intercontinental Championship to Sami Zayn in that 3-on-1 handicap match at Elimination Chamber. So it was just like, this was purely rushed. No build, no nothing, and Strowman's just the Universal Champion because the Tribal Chief had to pull out. Well, he was the big dog, actually. Had to pull out of WrestleMania. I didn't, like, kudos to Strowman for stepping up, but it was just like, you knew he wasn't originally going to win that championship any other day of the week besides that. So it's a shame, too. And Goldberg being champion, I mean, we could talk about that for hours if we really needed to. But now we move on to WrestleMania 35. Holy shit, this was a long-ass card. Main card we'll only talk about. Rollins-Lesnar Universal title. AJ Styles versus Randy Orton. Usos versus Aleister Black and Ricochet. Rusev and Shinsuke and The Bar. Fatal 4-Way for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. We had Shane McMahon versus The Miz in a Falls Count Anywhere match. We had a Fatal 4-Way match for the Women's Tag Team titles won by the Iconics. Kofi Kingston versus Daniel Bryan for the WWE title. Samoa Joe versus Rey Mysterio for the United States title. Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre. Batista versus Batista in a no-holds-barred match. Baron Corbin versus Kurt Angle in a retirement match. Finn Balor versus Bobby Lashley for the IC title. And then we had Becky Lynch, Ronda Rousey, and Charlotte Flair for the SmackDown and Raw Women's Championship. My pick... I have three options, okay? And it's hard to know which one to pick. My three choices are Samoa Joe versus Rey Mysterio, Baron Corbin versus Kurt Angle, and the main event. You know what? I know the women's stands are going to kill me. My pick for worst match has to go to Becky Lynch versus Ronda Rousey versus Charlotte Flair for the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championship. Listen. I am happy that these three women had that main event spot. More particularly Becky Lynch, because at this point they were building her up to be this rebel character, the woman that everyone said, you won't do this, you won't do that. The woman that was constantly overlooked for people like Ronda Rousey and Charlotte, but the execution of this match, the amount of botches. It seemed like Ronda Rousey at this point also didn't give a shit about how her moves looked like anymore. Like the botches, like it was clear that all three women were also clearly tired because this show went well past midnight by the time this match started. And listen, like Becky Lynch had an amazing moment, winning both women's belts. But also, I can't talk about this match without talking about the botch that happened on this match, where Becky rolled up Ronda. Ronda's shoulder was clearly off the mat. I don't know whose fault that is, whether Becky turned too much for the roll-up and Ronda couldn't put her shoulder down, or if it was just like Ronda being like, I don't give a fuck anymore. But, yeah, that botch was absolutely terrible. And that was the pin that got Becky the win. Yeah, no, like for the first women's main event of WrestleMania, this wasn't it, in my opinion. And I know people like Becky stans especially might get mad at that. I don't hate Becky, but this match was absolutely terrible. So I have to give it the worst match of Mania 35. I think to save time, I'll just talk about like key matches and then give my picks. So now we're at WrestleMania 34. We had Rollins, Miz, Balor. We had Charlotte, Asuka. We had Kurt Angle and Ronda Rousey versus Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. We had The Undertaker versus John Cena. We had Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon versus Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. We had AJ Styles versus Shinsuke Nakamura. And we had Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns for the Universal belt. And then my pick, Braun Strowman and Nicholas versus defeating Cesaro and Sheamus for the Raw Tag Team titles. Holy shit. This sucked. Like, and I get it. It was all for the hee-hee ha-has and all that shit. But why? So Braun Strowman, this whole build-up was Strowman won a tag team battle royal that he inserted himself in. The Raw general manager was like, hey, you need to pick a partner. Spent weeks speculating, like a lot of people said, Kane. Like, Kane was my heavy favorite to be his partner in the build-up to this. Strowman goes over to the crowd, picks a 10-year-old kid called Nicholas. And Strowman, like, this was basically a 2-on-1 handicap match. I remember there was one point where Nicholas got tagged in, looked scared shitless at Cesaro, and Strowman just tagged himself back in and wins. Not only did that just make the bar look like absolute bitches, but it was a waste of time. Strowman and Nicholas win the tag team titles, which was Strowman's first title win in the WWE. And then they vacate it the very next night on Raw. So this was just for the laughs. This was just for laughs and gags. And I don't care about what anybody says or, you know, like, I don't hate Nicholas. Nicholas seems like a good kid, but it was like, this was a waste of time. And I hate waste of times on my WrestleManias. So Strowman, Nicholas versus The Bar are my pick for the worst match of WrestleMania 34. Now we move on to the first Mania I watched as a fan, WrestleMania 33. We had a lot of bangers on this card. AJ Styles versus Shane McMahon, Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho for the U.S. title. We had John Cena and Nikki Bella versus The Miz and Maurice in a mixed tag team match. We had the Hardys winning the Raw tag titles. We had Orton Bray, we had Rollins, Triple H, we had Lesnar, Goldberg, Roman Reigns versus The Undertaker, and we had the six-pack challenge for the SmackDown Women's Championship as well. My pick, I know everyone's pick would probably be like Orton Bray at Mania 33, but I got to talk about Roman Reigns versus The Undertaker, and that is my pick for WrestleMania 33. This match didn't need to be the main event. And no fault, like, I love both wrestlers. I love Roman Reigns as much as I hate his reign now, and I love The Undertaker. But the Undertaker just didn't need to be in this. Undertaker was too out of shape, and the fact that this was the main event as well absolutely killed me. Both men tried to do their best with what they were given, but the execution was just absolutely horrible. The botches as well, mainly on the part of The Undertaker. And listen, I'm not blaming The Undertaker. Like, he was clearly too old to do this. Couldn't lift Roman up very well. He tried to do the signature Taker sit-up, but his bad hip prevented him from doing it. So he really just sat up and then just fell right over. Like, it was just a sad thing to watch. And after Roman Reigns got the win, which I thought was absolutely terrible as well, was Undertaker hinted retirement. And I felt like it was they did it well with the retirement tease. And I felt like Undertaker should have retired here. But of course, with Mania 34, they brought The Undertaker back, gave him millions of dollars probably to beat John Cena in a squash match. This was not it. This was not a good match. The fact that this was the main event as well was absolutely unnecessary. So I got to give this to Roman Reigns versus The Undertaker. Now we move on to WrestleMania 32, where we had the Intercontinental title ladder match, Jericho Styles. We had Lesnar and Ambrose in a no-holds-barred street fight. We had the women's triple threat. We had Undertaker, Shane McMahon. We had Rock versus Eric Rowan, and we had Roman Reigns, Triple H for the World Heavyweight Championship. This is an easy pick for me. This was a pick that I knew I was going to pick before this video. I'm going Brock Lesnar versus Dean Ambrose in a no-holds-barred street fight. Not only was this match boring, not only was it underwhelming, but the build to the match as well. Like, they made it seem like this was going to be like what Dean Ambrose did in all those indie promotions before he came to WWE. This was supposed to be like the most extreme of extreme matches. And, you know, you even had legends like Mick Foley and I'm pretty sure Terry Funk as well. Giving Ambrose all these different weapons. All that we really seen were chairs and like a moment of the match where Ambrose had like a barbed wire bat or something and like made out with it or something. I don't fucking remember. And then Brock Lesnar did a F5 on a bunch of steel chairs and wins. This was just a Brock Lesnar ego fest match and nothing extreme happened from it. Ambrose looked like a bitch and yeah, no, this match didn't need to exist either. It was just an excuse to get Brock on the card. Ambrose was a fan's favorite, so they were just like, okay, we'll feed him to Brock. Absolutely terrible. And yeah, Ambrose should have won the Royal Rumble and faced Roman Reigns, even if it was one-on-one or, God forbid, if Rollins never got hurt. We should have gotten that Shield triple threat match in the main event, but it didn't happen, so fuck that. Then we got WrestleMania 31. One of my favorite WrestleManias of all time. We'll skip the pre-show match. It's a pretty small card as well. Daniel Bryan winning the Intercontinental title ladder match. We had Orton Rollins, Triple H versus Sting, AJ Lee and Paige versus the Bella Twins, Cena and Rusev for the U.S. title. We had Undertaker Wyatt, and then we had Seth Rollins beating Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar in that main event triple threat match for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. Now, women's stands are going to kill me again. AJ Lee and Paige defeating the Bella Twins. Why? You could have, like in the Divas Championship, like I forget who was Divas Champion at this show, because every time I rewatch WrestleMania, I just skip it. Like, you could have had the Divas title on the line, even if you wanted to do a 4-way match, or even triple threat. Could have had AJ, Paige, and pick a member of the Bella Twins. Especially considering the fact that this was around the time where the Bellas were like feuding or something like that. Or maybe it was a little bit before or a little bit after this. You could have planted the seeds at the Bella Twins like turning on each other. But you didn't. This was just an excuse to get both Bellas on the card. Johnny Ace was probably like, hey, get my stepdaughters on there. People power. No, man. Like, it was absolutely horrible. I would have loved an AJ Lee versus Paige one-on-one match for the Divas title, but they were facing each other a lot over that past year, so I guess I kind of understand why they didn't want to give them a one-on-one rematch at WrestleMania a year after Paige upsetted AJ. I think this was AJ Lee's last match in WWE as well, if I'm not mistaken. Fact checkers can correct me in the comments, but nah, man. This isn't it. Just an excuse to get a women's match on the card. Could have done a lot better with that Divas title. And this was when you basically knew that Divas title was irrelevant. Because if it was in a tag match at WrestleMania, not even going to be on the line, there was no reason for this match to exist. It seemed like a filler match as well to get in between Triple H and Sting and Cena Rusev. So it was just like, what was the point? Now we go on to the final match of WrestleMania. The final WrestleMania that we are going to talk about. We got Daniel Bryan, Triple H. We got the Shield versus Kane and New Age Outlaws. We got the Andre Battle Royal. We had Cena versus Wyatt. We had Undertaker, Lesnar. We had the Divas Battle Royal. And then we had Daniel Bryan versus Batista versus Randy Orton in a triple threat match. I had a brain fart there. Yeah, no, Divas stands aren't going to like me again, and this is basically default. I got to give it to the Vicky Guerrero Invitational. And listen, kudos for having all those women on the card. But this was when the Divas division was basically dead in the water. And I love AJ Lee. But again, like I said about the Divas match at WrestleMania 31, this was basically filler match. And to get in between Undertaker and Brock Lesnar and get in between the triple threat with Bryan, Orton, Batista. This was just the cool-off match, the bathroom break match, to really get you over the shock of Brock ending the streak against The Undertaker and to prepare you for Bryan, Batista, Orton. This was a terrible placement on the card as well for the co-main event. And not to take anything away from the challengers and the ladies in this match, but it was just like, meh. You know what I mean? And it was predictable as well. Like, it was obvious AJ Lee was going to win. Like, who else was it going to be? Who? Like, the only other favorite I see in this list was Nikki Bella. That's it. Or maybe even Natalya, if you want to consider her a favorite. What, you think Oksana was going to win? Cameron? Eva Marie? Rosa Mendez? Like, no, it wasn't going to happen. So, yeah, that has to be my pick for the worst match of WrestleMania 30. No fault to the talent, but it was just like the card placement and, you know, just how predictable it was. It just made me want to pick that match. So, anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that is my pick for the worst match of every single WrestleMania from WrestleMania 39 to WrestleMania 30. I know that a lot of people might have disagreed with my picks. So, if you have your own picks, leave them down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching as well. Be sure to like, be sure to subscribe, be sure to turn post notifications on so you never miss an upload. And yeah, that's about it. Be sure to check out all the other videos on my channel. We are on the road to WrestleMania, so we're doing a bunch of WrestleMania related content, so be sure to check that out as well. Anyways, this has been it for me. This has been your boy Willie Does Wrestling. I will see you in the next video. Be good people and peace.